Hello, welcome back to another exciting show of YOML, a year of magical learning. Today we are on episode 85, and Chris will tell you where the geniuses are located.
Book 85 is a book called The Geography of Genius by the author Eric Weiner, quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. He's like a mixture of travel, philosophy, history. It's a really fun journey that he weaves together very nicely in a great narrative. This particular book is about
We talked about his earlier book, right?
The Geography of Bliss, and
Bliss,
I think
right.
Did we already do that?
We have not.
Okay. Then that one's coming up in the future, I guess, as well. So, but yeah, we did the Geography of Bliss.
So now it's the Geography of Genius.
So he goes to places where great innovations have happened and new things have happened in this world, places like Athens or Silicon Valley, Renaissance Florence, Vienna in the 1900s, and the Song Dynasty in Hangzhou. He goes to all these different places in time, and he kind of looks at the environment and the characteristics and how that all came to be to produce what we all know now as like these places where this genius on top of genius seemed like it was coming out of there. And it's like, how did that happen, right? And actually we talked about this a little bit in the past with the book from Just Kids by Patti Smith, The Geography of Genius plus Loon Shots equals Just Kids, right? Because we talked about the geography of all the genius that came out of New York City and the 60s, 70s timeframe and the art that was created. So that book reminded me of. Right. So anyway, so it's a fun read. I loved it. I thought it was a really entertaining journey. So I don't know. Any interest in reading it yourself?
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. There you go. So, but on to the reflection. So this book really made me think about pain, trauma, and adversity is the spark that ignites genius. So as Eric takes you to different place and time and talks about all the circumstances and confluence of events and random compound effect things that come to be that turn Renaissance Florence into what we know it today as like this great place of art and Michelangelo's and David, the Sistine Chapel, all these things that just seem like Da Vinci, all these things that just seem like they just spontaneously kind of came out of that whole entire thing. He talks about all these, in each one of these places, he goes through that. The one thing that I kept hearing over and over again, that was the only common thread that I kept hearing, and probably because my brain has that lens these days, what I saw was preceding every single one of these places where the geography in a particular location spurred on this crazy genius growth, all was preceded by pain and trauma. For me, it made me start to think a little bit deeper around like, maybe pain and trauma is the spark that ignites genius in general. And as we've talked about from my own story on this particular journey, when Amelia passed away about 2.5 years ago, after the initial shock and maybe the first 2 or 3 months of just trying to figure out where I even was. I mean, I was just in a whole other world at that point in time. But, since then, I've probably had the most creative explosion that I've ever had in my entire life. I've always been a creative person and I've always liked to ideate, generate new things, to try new stuff. Like the day-to-day creative output and explosion of things that have come from my own pain and trauma was the lens that I kept seeing this story through, that internal drive to want to use that pain and to turn it into something, turn it into a purpose, turn it into something that can do something better for this world and not just sit there and die with it and become a waste of space. Hell, you and I met because of this journey. And I don't know who else is going to be wrapped up into our journey as we go, but because now this is our shared journey together. But at the end of the day, this is what I'm writing about, what we're talking about every single day. This is all coming from a place of creativity and output from that creativity that spurns from pain. You might not see it today. You might see us having fun conversations about things like this. You might see in the future, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, Clubney becomes the vision that you and I want it to be. But at the end of the day, when they see the genius that comes out of our club members and giving people an ecosystem to live their purpose, they may not see that the spark that united it all was other people's pain and trauma all coming together to give them a place where that ecosystem where they could go live their purpose and to go create their meaningful work. So that's just kind of, I guess, at a high level what this particular book made me think about in general. But I may be wrong. I'd love to get your thoughts on whether or not you feel like, just on the topic in general, like the geography of genius, how does genius come to be? Am I on the right track? I mean, do you think that that's, a good thought? Love to pause and get your thoughts there.
So I'm thinking that, when you become or somebody is a genius, that's super rare, right? I mean, if everybody is genius, then everybody's average.
Right. Yeah, right.
So I think when somebody is a genius, it's something that is not average. It is the anomaly of the average, whatever that is. That means that For me, it makes me think that I agree to a certain extent that pain and trauma and adversity is a spark of a genius. But I think that's not the real reason why you have geniuses. I think because when you are in pain, I mean, similar to what we talked about in the past, when somebody immigrate to another country,
Right.
it's because there's so much pain
Right.
that they have to look for something that is completely different. You risk your life sailing across the ocean and many dies, but you still have to go because the choice of taking that risk is better than the pain that you are suffering.
Exactly.
So people are gonna jump, right? They're gonna jump just because. I mean, you're talking about the slaves who escaped to the north. You're talking about the Vietnamese running from the communists after the war ended and being chased and being captured and put into, re-education camp and all that, right? They risk their life to cross the ocean on boats that stack you like sardines, and because that even that risky is better than staying, because that's the pain that you are suffering. The pain is so great that you have to do things that is not average, it's not normal.
Right.
And because you do that, right, that means that the chance of you becoming a genius is, I guess, more, just because you're doing things that's not the same.
Right. You're breaking them. You're breaking the mold, the norm. Like
you're jumping out of the current average society, the world that exists today,
blown up, right?
So you are approaching from a perspective that most people are not. Your perspective is completely different, and sometimes you very unique. But at the same time, I'm saying is pain and drama is the cause for you to jump, but that doesn't necessarily create a genius, because there are millions of pain and drama and adversity. But how many geniuses comes out there? To me, the fact of getting out of the average, of the norm, of the common, right, the commonality, you have a much better chance to become a genius. But that determines what you do after that, not just having a pain, adversity, and trauma, right? So to me, there's more pain and drama, but there's so few geniuses. So pain and drama does not always, spark the genius. You have to have the pain for you to do something that's not what you used to. Because right now, what we have today, right? Our life is going to be pretty much the same. You and I probably do the same thing. We don't do anything different because nothing forces us to do that, right? And so for me, in terms of the geniuses, that is, you have to jump out. You want to jump out of the ordinary to become other than ordinary, whether you call it extraordinary or whatever you want to call it. It's not ordinary. And then once you have somebody who has sparks like creativity and able to create a genius, then for me, the second variable is you attract other like-minded people.
Ecosystem.
Like when we're talking about, how somebody was able to run under a 4-minute mile, right?
Right.
Because once somebody achieved it, then other people have to believe. Right. And they were able to say, yeah, if he can do it, that means that's possible. Right. Therefore, I can do it too. So they're gonna train and then become, to break the world record again. To me, the geography of genius is that, if that particular era, locations, country, or social normal caused the pain, somebody jumped out and happened to figure out these right configurations, the right formula to spark a genius. And once it sparked a genius, it attracts other smart genius people as well to become the Silicon Valley, the Athens, the Florence, and the Song Dynasty. And I think that's the multi-part that goes through my mind when I'm thinking about how does genius form. Genius is, having at least 3 separate ingredients that I know of. It could be more, right? There probably a lot more, but at least 3 that you have to have, because genius is super rare.
I agree. I like to think of, my thought is around the pain and trauma is, that's like the match that lights the tender, that lights the spark, right?
But you needed that for the rest to happen. So that is a crucial ingredient. So I agree with that. Right. Because at the same time, when you light the match and the tinder is it start to light up, but it could fail. It could just die out.
Or not just die out, like it could kill you. I mean, you could just sit in the fire, or it could catapult you forward into a different way. I don't know why somebody turns their pain into a purpose versus turning their pain into Death. I don't know the answer to that. I know for me that my answer is because Amelia was that special to me that I had no choice in my
But
mind.
what's sure though is that anyone who has pain and drama and adversity will have a unique perspective. They will be more
Exactly.
creative than they would be.
Exactly.
Right?
Because they're
Become
by
a genius, it needs to have other ingredients as well. But one thing for sure is that every single one that has pain and drama will have a unique perspective that is no one would be able to have. And that insight is going to give them the ability to have much better art of getting to the genius, whatever that target is.
Because genius can't ever come unless the paradigm shifts. And I don't know
like I
how,
said, you know, you have to be not ordinary.
Exactly. The only surefire way that I know that you can generate a paradigm shift is through adversity. I mean, you see the world differently. After you see what's really possible, like it's the 1,000-day turkey. Once you're the 1,001st day turkey, you're like, shit, all these other turkeys that I'm looking down the row, you're like, you guys don't even know. We got to band together and go do something while we have only, I mean, we got 1,000 days, guys. Like, we got to do some shit, you know? Life, you know, it might seem great. You're wasting your time. Like, we got to get to work. We have things to do, you know, and maybe that turkey house, you know, whatever that one turkey that survived and went back and told all the other turkeys, like, it was like, holy shit, are you kidding me? Like, we're going to die in 1,001 days. And they're going to be like, well, gobble, gobble, gobble. Like, let's get to work, you know? And I mean, it's so like, then the dynamics of randomness start to come into play, right? That's what we're trying to do in Cloveny, right? It's bring together a bunch of people that have had their paradigms shifted to say, okay, there's got to be a better way here. And then the randomness that results from that of like, we only have a limited amount of time and we need to do what we want to do in this world and produce meaningful work that matters to us and that aligns to our purpose. And then the randomness will take effect from there as to if society and history sees this as a genius event or not.
If you stay in the ordinary, the chance is zero.
Yes, exactly. There is zero chance. Yeah, you're right.
Go back to what I'm saying is if everybody's a genius, then it's going to be average. There's not a genius. Genius is super rare. That's by definition. So it has to be out of the ordinary and whatever you want to call it. But that's what I'm saying is, you know, the people who has the pain and adversity and the trauma, they have to resort to something that is not average. Correct. And that give them a leap in terms of the probability of stumble upon genius, because their perspective is completely different now. Whether they make it or not, that's, you know, has to be determined. Right. But at least they have a positive chance of becoming a genius. And to me, the question would be, do I have to have adversity to even have this chance of becoming a genius? I say no, there's a shortcut. Because you think about a turkey, right? If a turkey sees another turkey get chopped off 1,001 day, that turkey is traumatized. And that turkey is going to try to tell his friends, his family is going to say, ah, you're dreaming and all that. So to me, the shortcut is find somebody who has overcome adversity and trauma and pain and listen to them, because they will influence you and they will change the way that you think. Agreed. And like I say, that's better than nothing. But you don't need to have to go through adversity, because you think about it. If you come across somebody who has gone through war, the Marine or whatever, do you think that person's afraid of anything? You think a person who overcome cancer is going to afraid of anything, right?
It could be, but like that. No,
somebody
we don't know.
Who have beat cancer and is on this mission to do whatever. Right. How can you stop them? The only way you stop that person from doing what they want to do after they conquer something big, it is actually to kill them, to take them out. So you think about a person who has adversity, they have a different perspective. Right. Whether they're right or wrong, right? It is to determine, but at least they have a much, much better chance than being average. So for me, is find the people who have the adversity, who have overcome them, right? And you know, join into that circle and see if the influence is going to give you any change in your thought. I do think it looks logical. Yeah, okay, yeah, I can see it now. But until then, I would never have thought about it. It never occurred to me.
Agreed. I want to make two important caveats to what you just said, because I agree with everything you just said, except for some terminology that, you know, always be impeccable with your words, right? I am by no means saying that you and I are geniuses in any way, shape, or form. Genius is what comes out of the ecosystem, the end product that will come out of the ecosystem that we're trying to build. We're trying to build a place that can support and foster genius that comes from that, not pain and trauma makes you a genius or something like that. Genius is a label that we give to people.
Genius to me is something that somebody does that is creative.
Marvel,
Yes,
creative.
exactly.
Yeah, creativity.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a person. When you think of that particular concept, that's a genius, right?
Yes, the output is genius. Like it's not, you and I are not geniuses. Like, I mean, maybe the output of what
you
comes
and I
of
both
our
know we
meaningful
know
work.
shit. We don't know shit.
Exactly. So that's an important caveat. And then the second caveat is you can never forget. At least me, I will never forget. No matter how adjusted you might think of me or happy, living a purpose-driven life, etc., like, producing meaningful work, like, don't get me wrong, they bring me joy, but like they were built on just unfathomable pain that I would give up in a heartbeat. Like, I would give up all the meaningful work that I produced for the rest of my life to have a chance to spend some time with my daughter again, just for an hour or something like that. So like this goes back to those conversations I always have about like these thought leaders and whatnot. They're like, turn your pain into gain, into action, into purpose.
Why I say, do you need to have pain to kind of be in that circles of genius? Don't. All you have to do, the shortcut is go find somebody, like, given a considerations to listen to them and see if it makes sense to you, because they could change your perspective, right? That's the fresh perspective that you want, because everybody else is going to tell you the same blah, blah, blah old story. Only the guy that goes through that adversity will have a new perspective. Lend your ear to that guy or girl, and see what happens. Now, the good perspectives, but at least they have a different perspective.
Go listen and learn. I mean, this is the point.
Like I said, I don't want people to go looking for pain and drama and all whatever. I think that's just kind of dumb.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I feel like 90% of the stories that I read and the books that I write reflections about are me listening to other people's pain and trauma that they went through. I just bought a book yesterday called Running for My Life. It's sitting on the desk next to me. It's about Warwick Dunn. You know who Warwick Dunn is? The NFL running back?
Right.
Talk about pain and trauma. As he was graduating high school, his mom was a cop and she had a single mother and she got shot. I don't know the whole story yet. She was working a side job to make extra money to pay for their family as a security officer, and she got shot and died. And he was left as he was getting ready to enroll in Florida State, not having a mother and, basically being responsible for his 5 younger siblings, as the oldest person. So he moved them all to Florida State. That was the catalyst event that drove everything. I want to hear what he has to say. Your point of what you're saying, like, you can hear these stories. All you have to do is look. That's what I've been doing this entire
open mind.
Right. And the best part about books is, it's really hard to go find Warwick Dunn. Like, Warwick Dunn doesn't live in my circle, like Drew Brees. I remember hearing about Drew Brees' story as a kid. Like, he had like a crazy mom or something like that. I don't want to speculate because I don't really know this whole story, but I know there was some like pain and trauma that drove him as a youngster. That was like some crazy life that I'm pretty sure, probably, if I had to guess, was a big catalyst and drivers to what he became today. He hasn't written his own autobiography, but I can't wait for the day that comes out when they talks about how did Drew Brees become Drew Brees? Like, I don't know the answer, but I want to know. As a matter of fact, I was actually just literally, that was my reflection this morning. I just finished this book on Shakespeare by Bill Bryson. Bottom line is, we don't know anything about Shakespeare. Like, all we know is his meaningful work. We don't know anything about the guy.
You only hear the things that is, just like when you light a fireworks, you only see the boom, right? You don't see everything else that goes behind how to make that boom in the sky. And all the work takes days and whatever, and all the effort for that 1 or 2 second of boom in the sky.
Exactly. The whole point is, it's not about the genius that everybody else sees, the meaningful work that the rest of the world goes, oh wow, that was the David that comes out of Renaissance Florence. It was about people living their purpose and doing, for whatever reason, the why behind all that stuff, right? Like, that's where real genius comes from. And that only happens, I think, personally, by pain and trauma sparking something and driving you to go, people like myself and yourself.
I think it's about the drive, the drive, because to become a genius, you need to have a lot of work involved. And in order to work, you need to have something that's going to power you, because pain is like a nuclear power plant, right? It has so much potential, so much energy for you to use. If you don't have that, you get exhausted before anything becomes reality, just because you couldn't turn the corner to find the success that you wanted. And so the pain and drama is essentially the driver behind these things, because like I said, you have to be able to look from an unordinary perspective. And then from there, it requires a lot of work. It requires all these random things that come into the scene. And whether or not it combines to become the genius, whatever we want to call that, it's required a lot of iterations. And that iteration requires power, it requires energy. Right. And so without the motivations to continue, you're going to quit short of your goal. And
willpower cannot power genius. Like that will not happen. Willpower alone will never be the source.
I think willpower is overrated because people think willpower is so powerful, but willpower is only lasts you a day, a couple of days. Eventually you get exhausted and you can't continue to do it. Willpower is short term. It's like, hey, I'm going to withstand this pressure for a minute or two, or a day or two, or a week or two. But other than that, eventually it's going to exhaust out and you're going to have to give in. No one has ever used willpower to overcome anything. I don't care if you're, Dalai Lama, right? If you want to go to hunger strike, right? You can do for a month, but you can't do forever. I'm saying he's much, much better than me. I can't go fasting for a month. He could, I couldn't, but willpower can only go so far. And then eventually it's going to be completely depleted and you're going to have to go back.
Agreed. 100%. Like, I mean, it's a short-term, like it's almost like a video game when you take one of those little boosters or something like that, like that it peters out, right? Like it's not a sustainable source of energy.
It's one of those things where it's always going to get depleted, and depending on the person, the volume of the willpower may be varies from person to person, but it doesn't last. And so you can't rely on willpower to change the way that you think, to change the way that you do things, right? You think a spark of genius or whatever, it's going to take you 30 days?
No, it's a lifetime.
Take you years.
It's a lifetime.
A long time. So how can you have something that will take you further than just, a short-term willpower can get you? So willpower is overrated in terms of how people think of it. I'm not saying willpower isn't useful. I'm saying, yes, it does, but it has its place. It has its purpose.
Right. Only break when necessary kind of thing. So final question for you before we wrap this one up. One of the things we haven't really touched on is the actual geography portion of all this stuff. Do you think that you have to be in a particular location, time, and place for genius to unfold? Or
I think it's a factor because there's a lot of geniuses coming out of Germany. The Jews are very smart, right? Because of the way they behave in the adversity they become, right? And then it depends on, like, for example, right now we have a lot of geniuses in America, right? America has a lot of genius, and these geniuses aren't like native to the country. They are immigrants. Because the thing is, have pain and suffering, and they know that America will accept them, right? And so they jump over, they come here. And then when they come here, they attract other people, right? So to me, yes, it plays a factor, but the factor isn't what you think.
I agree. That's a really interesting point. It just made me think of what you and I are doing. Like eventually this will attract other people. I mean, it's attracted people already, and we'll continue to attract people to this stuff, not because we're trying to, but I think that people will see a place and know that we're truly from our hearts saying we want to help people to live their purpose and produce meaningful work and live a life of meaningful relationships as well. And we are willing to do whatever needs to be done to give people the opportunity to do so. And we're sharing our thoughts in this whole entire journey together. And we're taking the time to thoughtfully put this together to show to the world that this is what our pain and trauma is. This is our beautiful question. This is our meaningful work that we're trying to produce. Like, does this sound interesting to you? And if it does, join the mission. Let's all live a balanced life together, filled with meaningful work and meaningful relationships, and see what randomness comes of that. But yeah, I agree with you. What you were saying really hit home, of immigrants coming to another place where they're like, this is my home. This is a place where I can go and live my pain, live out my purpose that I want to go live.
Right. America doesn't welcome immigrants. Would geniuses be gathered here?
No, they'd go where they were welcome. They would go where they felt people wanted to listen.
Yes. So that means that it's going to track like characteristic and personality.
Right. So geography does have a little bit of a factor.
It's one of the ingredients.
Maybe. We don't know it.
Be open-minded to the people who have gone through adversity, have conquered it. They will be a godsend for you.
read a book. Like listen to a story, watch a movie.
Yes and no, because you have to understand that you have to pick the books correctly, right? You can't just pick any book, say, hey, I'm the expert of this, I'm the guru of that. Most books aren't that. So I mean, I just want to make that disclaimer.
I mean, that's all right. We can dive into that in the future, but it's an interesting point. But I have my own thoughts that we'll save it for the future here. But
Right.
So the question we can leave with anybody still tuning in with us is, how can you find others searching for answers to questions like yours? And if you're searching for, if your pain has caused you to want to go search for balance and join in a community of other people like you to go, figure out how you can turn that pain into some sort of a purpose and art, and produce a meaningful work out there, let us know. We're always available and we're here to listen. And we can't wait to work with you.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.